go.
Yeah,
Hey, I'm trying to make it go to the next.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a 4-week series created by A Sanctified Art, which is a group of ministers and artists that have come together to try to create curriculum that incorporates art and creativity in our exploration of spirituality. And it's a 4-part series. It focuses on the importance of relationships and how we might cultivate deeper connections by sharing our stories, our feelings, and our needs in a spirit of love and acceptance. In this way, we're going to hope to embody God's commandment to love each other in the same way that I've loved you. Or as Greg Boyle would say, it's also as a way of helping us discover our true selves, because we find our true selves in loving. Okay. In the first week, we talked about where are you from and how Clark led us. And this question acknowledges the fact that listening to each other's stories and learning about who and what has shaped us is important. And we talked about the need to affirm the particularity of our individual identities while also acknowledging our common ground. The question, where are you from, is sometimes coupled with assumptions, judgments, and even microaggressions we discussed. And all of that can be exhausting and painful to receive. But so our challenge is to acknowledge and release these assumptions that we hold about others and to focus on our commonality. The second week was last week, and Joan Wright led us in a discussion of where do you hurt? And this question acknowledges that experiencing pain and suffering is a part of the human condition, and that we all have this in common. We can't fix someone's pain, but being present with someone in pain can provide comfort by validating their feelings and showing them that they're not alone. And bearing witness and trying to understand each other's pains can help us activate compassion. Am I blocked? Is that share something? Am I making that share?
No, it's the screen, unfortunately.
Okay. So today we're talking about what do you need? And this question recognizes that we all have needs and that we need each other. I have not filled in the rest of the bullet points because we're going to see where our discussions take us. But I expect it to have a lot of overlap with last week's sessions of where do you hurt, in that it's going to, we'll be talking a lot about presence, listening, acceptance, and that kind of thing. But the questions are not exactly the same. So we'll talk a little bit about how they are different. This image is by Leslie Gwen Garrity. It's a digital painting with mixed media collage. And I'm gonna talk about why she did this and what it means to her. But before I did, I was gonna give you all a chance, and don't feel that you have to share, but I was gonna give you all a chance to share if you've ever been a recipient of care from someone and how that made you feel. What did they do and how did that make you feel? If nothing comes to mind, I'm going to share her story. I just want to give y'all a chance to think about when you have received care from somebody else and how that made you feel.
Well, I receive care from people all the time, like we all do, and especially in the pandemic, people just come forth and want to help us. My problem is it's easier for me. So how do you graciously accept care and be content with it? I want to reach out and help.
You're saying how to accept the help, the care?
Yeah.
Is that your- That's a great question. Does anybody else
I don't think we're good at that.
identify? Mhm.
Most of us.
Mhm. I agree with you. I agree with you. It's a really good question, Nancy. Well, let me ask you this way. How do you feel when you give care? It's kind of, in my mind, it's kind of a privilege to be able to give care. So in some ways, I think realizing that you're giving somebody else a chance to do something that's fulfilling, and Greg Boyle would say, allows them to discover their true selves, is really a gift to them. That's one thought I had.
I think it's easier to receive.
Right, right.
I think God
That's-
wise.
I hadn't thought about it that way.
Good. God wires us to,
Just hope, you know, we're as humans, I firmly believe we're happiest when we're thinking of someone other than self. And the act of giving is so not self-oriented, and in the sort of fulfillment that you give in doing for another is a heck of a lot better than the fulfillment that you give of doing something for yourself. One is short-lived, the other is really deep and wonderful.
Well put. Thank you. I think that's huge. And I forgot to say that the reason I happen to be teaching this class is not because I'm a skilled teacher or experienced, but Gerald wanted a Stephen minister. She thought it would be good if a Stephen minister led this class. And so that's why I'm here. I'm one of 18 active Stephen ministers in this congregation. And we go through a lot of training before we become Stephen ministers, and then continuing ed twice a month after we become Stephen ministers. Who in here has been a Stephen minister? Bill?
No, those are.
Lesson, yeah. Anyway, it's so what we're talking about today is just right up our alley. Is what we're trained to think about and do. And it truly is a privilege to be a Stephen minister, because someone's bringing you into their lives, they're trusting you, you're walking along beside them, and it allows you to, as you said, do what God wants us to do, be who God wants us to be, discover our, as Fred was, discover our true selves in loving somebody else. So it's a real privilege. And if you ever want to be a Stephen minister, or you ever need someone to walk beside you in acceptance and non-judging love, talk to Anna Rain. Can help you become one or help you work with one.
John, as you were talking, it struck me that one's motivation is important, because there's also a power dynamic. And if the person giving the aid is looking down on the person receiving the aid, that could be the wrong dynamic, I would think, as opposed to doing it out of love and respect and charity.
It's a very interesting comment. I don't think of it as that way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the humanity is one human to another human. But I can see, well, I'll help those poor people.
Yeah, that's right.
And make me feel better.
Makes me feel better. And then also the person receiving feels like they're weak
No,
and
I don't hold it that way, the way I.
no,
hold
no,
it
I'm
is-
not, wasn't
No,
saying,
no,
I was just
understand.
saying, I would
We
think
need to-
motivation
Well,
would be
that's an
It
interesting
important.
is.
comment in terms of, have you asked the question, have you ever received care? And a couple of times I have, and the idea that someone would want to do something, genuinely want to do something. Some people go through the motions of doing something for somebody else, but you know, care. That's an extraordinarily wonderful feeling that someone cares enough to do something for you. But you're right, it shouldn't have pity in it, it should have humanity in it.
Exactly.
And that makes me think of a theme that I'm sure Gerald was aware of from our lessons for the past couple of months, is the relationship between the carer and the caree, cared for. That,
We call them caregivers and care receivers.
okay, good. I knew Carrie was not.
All of them are good, but we say caregiver and care receiver.
Okay. That, the relationship needs to be there.
Yeah,
So,
Yes,
so if
key.
you,
it's key.
Yeah,
Takes time,
just, yes,
takes time,
and takes trust.
takes trust, belief in
So-
confidentiality, and
Got it. Yes.
there's two mottos come to mind that Stephen ministers use. One is God cares for people through people.
Mhm.
So it's a privilege to have that job. I mean, to use that image. And the other one that we say all the time is Stephen ministers are the caregivers. God is the caregiver. We care by being present. We care by listening. We care by accepting and loving. We don't fix anything. God does that, through their hearts. So I love those two.
What repeat those two again?
The first one is God cares for people through people. And the second is we are the caregivers. God is the cure giver. And the third one I'll throw in is that we have process-oriented goals. Our process is listening, being with, and like, are we doing a good job? We're doing a good job if we're listening, if we're caring, if we're present. And God has the results. We have the process, God has the results.
So is this tied together with last week's in the sense that if I'm personally feels like I'm hurt? So I don't know if we defined hurt was, but I think we all feel what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Then I should seek care.
mhm.
So
Yes,
that's
they
nice.
tie together exactly. As a matter of fact, when I saw that I was following her, I was like, are we gonna say the exact same things? I mean, it's gonna be, but there are some differences, but you know, whatever we talk about, it's gonna be different than what we talked about last time. But yes, they're very closely tied together, and there are lots of different kinds of hurt. But all the different kinds of hurt and other types of suffering all require care. The need is for care.
So as you were saying, you asked the question, have you ever been a care receiver or caregiver?
Mhm.
And we all kind of agreed that it's easier to give, that we tend more to give.
Mhm.
And I was thinking that part of that might be because of ego, that if for me to be a care receiver, I have to be very vulnerable. I have to reveal things about myself. I've lost control to a certain extent. And Bill, your point is, that, hurt calls for care. And if you're going to identify your hurt, like we talked about last week, if you're going to share it, then you've made that space. You sort of tenderized yourself,
Yeah.
to use Greg Boyle's word, in a way that you're in a position to receive care. I think that's the hard thing about receiving it.
It
It's
is.
just
It's
being
very
willing to
vulnerable.
like open up and
Right.
share.
And say, I'm not in control here.
Exactly.
Right. And really, you could say that the caregiver also has to be vulnerable because they're coming in there going, I don't know what they're gonna need from me. I don't know what they're gonna say to me. I don't know if I can do this, that's a vulnerable feeling too. And to be a good care receiver and to be caregiver and to be compassionate, you have to be aware of your own hurts and your own sufferings and your own feelings of need. Not to share them with the person, explain my story, but so that you can draw, it comes in here later, you draw on that well of feelings so that you can identify with the person and not just say, oh, poor person, that's terrible. You felt that way too. It's a common, different reasons, different degrees, but we all can identify. So quickly, I'm going to tell the story of Leslie's story and what is behind this picture for her. And I think I could do it without my glasses. So she talks about a day that her grandmother died and her mother-in-law called her. And her grandmother died of old age and she died peacefully. But her mother-in-law understood the significance of the loss because she had lost her mother previously and her grandmother had been her mother for her and also the matriarch of the family. So this death was going to call up all the feelings of her other losses, et cetera, too. And so she tells what her mother-in-law says on the telephone. She missed the call, but she left a message. Her message began, Leslie, I heard about your Nana. Then her voice cracked and she sighed and she began to weep. After a few moments of weeping quietly, she found her words again. Anyway, I love you. Call me if you want to talk. So Leslie says, I don't remember much of what others have said to me in the fresh fog of grief, but I will never forget that. She didn't need to ask me what I needed. Without assumption or question, she simply entered into my pain and joined me there. Her profound act of solidarity gave me great comfort when little comfort was to be found. In this image, I wanted to evoke the emotional impact of rending one's clothing in solidarity with someone who's hurting. While this ancient cultural practice might feel curious to us now, I love that it's an embodied way to tear away the armor that guards our own hearts so we can truly show up tenderly to join one another in their pain.
Beautiful. And how authentic.
I know.
I mean, she calls her, she doesn't know what to say, but she gets overcome with grief.
Exactly. Exactly. And that
So
meant more
what
for
was the
everything.
ancient thing that you talked
Oh,
about?
the rendering of your clothes, your rendering, like, did I say it right? Rending your garments.
Tearing.
Rending.
Yeah.
I'm not rendering,
Tearing.
tearing
Tearing
your
your
garments. And we're gonna read Job in a minute, and that's what his friends do when they come. And that's what he does. And you'll read it a lot in the Bible when people are suffering, they rend their clothes. Okay. So now I'm going to show the video that that minister who did. So I think she touched on a lot of things that we've talked about, which is great. Was there anything in particular that struck a chord with you, either because you agreed with her or you didn't quite agree, or just? anything?
I like she used the phrase, and now I've almost forgotten it, respect, curiosity, and there were three things.
Faith,
Faith,
yeah, we're getting to
yes.
that, we're gonna talk about that, yeah,
To think,
Yeah.
thinking, about your care for one another and those three.
yeah,
And it goes back to curiosity. Your question was, and not your question now, but the one that you led
where are
was,
you from?
yeah, where are you from? Was, if it comes from a place of curiosity, it comes from a place of desire to know. I like those three,
I do
that
too.
framing.
I do too, I very much do. So do you like the question, what do you need?
Well, sometimes, unlike where are you from,
Mhm,
what do you need, you're committing in advance, and what if they say something that is
Right,
like a lot,
right,
right? So you're opening yourself
Right.
up to the risk that what they need is gonna be quite involved under.
yeah, you really are. Is there anything you don't like about the question?
Can be very hollow.
Hollow?
Mhm.
You don't know what to say, or, you feel like you should help somebody. What do you need?
Mhm,
As opposed to sort of trying to open the space up. I can't possibly imagine what you're dealing with.
mhm,
I can't possibly imagine the hurt you must be experiencing.
mhm.
I've had some hurtful situations, but I've never had anything like this. But I care about you. What can I do? What do you need? That creates a space.
Are you sure you haven't been to Stephen Master?
No,
No, that's really great.
just to open it up.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
I think it could be intimidating for someone who's still like experiencing what they're experiencing. They're still can't even absorb what's happening to them. And you're saying, what do you need? I don't know. I don't know what I need. That's a lot of pressure you're giving me, as opposed to listening to whatever they happen to be saying now and just letting that soak in. And then maybe, getting them to expound upon it or whatever. And then over time, as you develop a relationship and a trust, trying to help them see what they need, help them figure out what their feelings are and all of that.
You mentioned that Stephen ministers are process oriented and God is results oriented. That a lot of times I think we go with that question thinking we'll get a result.
We can
Like,
fix it.
gosh, I would love if you would bring dinner,
Yeah.
which is an easy thing to do. But
Mhm.
so even if you were to ask that question to someone when they still are in that place of
Right.
feeling overwhelmed, the fact that you stay,
Right,
you don't get your one little task and
Right.
leave.
right.
It opens the space.
Yes.
Even if the question was overwhelming to begin with, I
Yes.
would think.
Very good point. Very good point.
And I think that's the difference is what you need requires maybe a specific answer when you really don't know.
Mhm,
And if you approach it like you said, you're being open-ended,
Right,
and you need to be open-ended when you ask questions.
very right.
I'm trained as a social worker, and you learn not to ever ask a question
Mhm,
that only has an answer.
Right,
You have to be open-ended
very.
so that
exactly right.
there's a discussion that takes place.
Exactly,
And it works better if you approach it the way you did.
yeah.
Or what do you need? They might not be willing to tell you either.
Mhm,
Right.
It might be, well, I don't know you well enough to tell you what I need.
Yeah.
But if you preface it with some compassion
Mhm.
and say, I can't imagine what you're feeling, then you're already building the rapport.
I think the question related to, I guess, is how are you? And how are you? I'm fine.
Mhm.
No, how are you? It's really going on. I think to me, that's actually something that might be more fruitful than what you need, because I don't always know what I need, but I can talk about how
How
I
you
feel.
How you feel?
How do I feel? How do I really feel? It's really
Yeah.
can be a good question, but
How are
I
you?
agree.
Might be a tough question to receive from someone that you don't know well. Or that, because to answer that, if you're struggling with something and you have to get incredibly vulnerable to answer the question, you may not want to be forthcoming to someone that you don't
Yeah,
know.
there's definitely different levels of relationship that have been established. So like if you're talking to one of your Bible study buddies or one of your close friends, I think how are you would work. If you're talking to somebody you just met at church, you probably aren't gonna get real deep right at first like that, but over time, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what, as a Stephen minister, how do you get to a point where someone, so that you can ask,
Mhm,
what do you need?
right.
Big-
Well, the first thing is, before you're paired with someone, they have come to Anna that they want one, you know, because we don't have any relationships if the person, it's not instigated by the person, or someone may suggest a person, you might need to see the minister.
Yeah.
Then they would go talk to Anna, and together Anna would explain what Stephen ministers do and how we walk beside and we don't fix things, and it's a long term. And so when we're together, when we're put together, we know already that that we're not on the same plane. I'm not gonna be sharing my deepest hurts, but I'm here to listen and be with you yours. And but then it may take time.
Yeah.
Then you just talk, you let them lead the way. They talk about what they want to talk about. And I've got a whole long list of Stephen ministry, things I've heard and learned that I'm just gonna share with you at the end. And we can attach it and send it out. It's a long process of, you know, and some people open up right away and other people, it takes a long time, and other people get matched up with the care receiver, and it kind of, they get close, and then you don't hear from them for a while, and then they get close. It's scary, it's vulnerable. So each relationship is different.
Yeah.
And then I've had some where it's just like, they're just so open. I just can't believe how open they are. Because I guess they feel they have a need and they want help.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, good question.
Thank you.
Mhm. So, and then my last question was kind of where Gerald was going. She says it's a question of faith, curiosity, and respect. How do you think it's a question of faith? What do you need a question of faith?
We're called to be our brother's keeper.
Mhm.
So if you go back to the lessons we get throughout the Bible, it's to help those in need. It's to do something for, like I said, we are our brother's keeper.
Mhm.
I think it's as simple as that.
I agree. And another thing would be the thing I said earlier is like, we have faith that God's going to be there in that. You know, we enter into the relationship and God's going to be there. And that is such, Stephen ministered over and over and over again, because it's such a, you just need to keep hearing that, because you feel so much responsibility. And even though we've been told this a million times, you go in there and you want to try, and you feel bad because you want to help to make it better. Got a baptism.
Thank you much.
Thank you. But we that's why we have continuing education. You keep hearing this over and over. This is God's work. You know, just be faithful of doing
That's
your part.
really, that is powerful.
It's powerful.
Well, because you get in a place you're not sure what you're supposed to do.
Mhm,
And if you will listen to that,
mhm.
you're not alone in the space. God's in there with you.
Yeah,
That allows you to totally relax.
it allows you to relax. Yeah, when you keep telling yourself, listening is the work I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm doing the listening. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's it. And it is so amazing. I've had 3 different relationships, and it's so amazing. Your care receiver will be telling you, you've been so helpful. Thank you. I'm like, I haven't done, and you're going, I haven't done anything except listen. And yet they're telling me, I don't know what I'd do without you. This has been so helpful in your life. God, because I'm not doing anything. I'm listening, sitting here listening. It's amazing. So we're not gonna spend a lot of time on this scripture because it's kind of just repeating the things we've said. We'll read it, but you'll see this is reinforcing what we said. When Job's 3 friends, and I won't say their names, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. In the other version, it says rends their clothes. Then they sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. So, I mean, what do you see? What did they do? They go immediately when they hear.
They express their grief
Next
at
business.
their pain at his pain.
Right,
Well, and invested 7 days.
right,
It's a long time.
right.
In silence.
In silence. Yep.
No one said a word.
When you go, I like to end right there, because when you go on in it, they do start saying some stuff to him. They couldn't help it. But you know what I said? I said, that's God saying, this is a human reaction. You know, he said, they tried to be silent. They were silent for a long time. Then they did start getting some of their opinions and all that stuff, but
But
That's
even in the space where they gave their opinions, Job was always free to respond.
right,
And it helped affirm
right,
where he eventually got to.
right. Very true, very true. And that's what you do as a listener too. You say, I hear you saying this, is this how you feel? And they can say yes or no, no, that's not how I feel. Or yes, it is how I feel. That just gives them someone to do.
This
it.
is another example that underscores Woody Allen's famous line,
And that is,
90% is showing up.
that's right.
These guys just went to be with him.
Yep.
Not a word said,
Mhm,
but that is unbelievably powerful.
mhm. And again, it takes the pressure off to realize how powerful that is. Because when someone that is hurting so badly, like, oh, what am I going to do? What can I say? Well, just say nothing. Just go. Just do that.
You said a minute ago, Mena, that you would ask questions. So the active listening, meaning to make sure I'm understanding, I'm asking questions,
Right,
not to
Open-ended
express an
questions.
opinion, but to understand,
right.
which to me shows respect as well as
Exactly.
curiosity.
Exactly. I trust you to tell me what you're feeling. Is this what I'm hearing? Yeah.
Yeah.
If I didn't get it right, help me. Yeah.
Because you don't always hear it right.
Right.
That's just a great tool.
Yeah,
Well, and you've only got your own lens to look
Right.
through.
exactly. Exactly. And the more they can tell and explain, the better they understand it themselves. Right.
This situation. If his friends had said, what can we do? Or started asking him questions. Doesn't sound to me like that's what he needed at the time.
Mm-mm.
Sounds to me like what he needed was just what happened.
Mhm.
Well, if the story stopped here,
What's that?
if the story stopped
Yeah,
here, but
yeah.
then as you said, they each
But-
had an
but-
opinion this time.
But that only came after 7 days.
You're right. Exactly. They'd already proved to themselves in their
And it's,
compassion. Yeah. And they obviously, and they already had a good relationship, or they wouldn't have been running over there to him. So they had a base for that. Very good. Anything else?
I think it's pretty amazing that it's just an aside, but what is a terminite and what's a schultite and what is a nemathite?
Is that
Now,
where they
those
came from?
tribes
I think
or
Well,
those
I think
geographic
they were
regions?
descendants from, and I'm thinking like Naaman. But I do think,
Oh, that's a last name.
well, perhaps, but what I was reading from that, and you picked up the same thing I did, was they are from all different places.
Mhm.
Or they're from all different tribes, or from them all different, and they came together. I think the fact that they identified them that way is that there's a reason why they identify them as specific. Because later, I don't think they refer to them as those far the name.
No.
But
They were friends. They were already friends
Right,
somehow.
yeah, that was the first thing that
Mhm.
said about
Yeah.
them, which says something that your being a friend is more important than where you come from.
Eliphaz,
Mhm.
Bildad, and so far. I don't know many people that ended up with those biblical names.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go on to a poem. Oops, I did. Okay, I did that. And can I ask somebody, oh, you probably can't see it. Can somebody else read it? Can you see it well enough to read it? It's too. Oh, well, oops.
Sorry, the screen is dark. It's dying, unfortunately.
Okay. Can y'all see it well enough to read, or you want me to read it? I'll read it. Can y'all see? Okay. I used to always ask, how can I help? but maybe I can't help. Maybe these hands are too small. Maybe the boat will sink anyway. Maybe your heart has been broken and grief has moved in, making itself at home in your life. Maybe what you need from me is not a solution or a plan or a fix-it strategy, but something else, something more. I'm learning to unlearn my desire to fix. I'm learning to unlearn centering myself in the story of your pain. When I asked before, how can I help? What I really meant to say was, what do you need? What do you need? My hands might be small, but they can still hold yours. I love that ending.
Last line.
That
Oh,
ending.
that's good.
So,
There is, and I was thinking this about Job and, to ask Job, what do you need? I mean, he had lost everything. And I love that at the beginning. I mean, it acknowledges that it could be so far gone. I mean, imagine going to a Ukrainian refugee and saying, what do you need? I
Exactly,
mean, there's-
everything.
I mean, everything is gone and you can be overwhelmed by that as someone
Mhm.
who's asking.
mhm.
But like you said, I mean, you just know that God's present in that. You
Right.
don't have to.
Yeah.
This is just repeating what you said.
Good, I love it.
But I like the, identifying,
Yeah.
maybe it goes too far gone,
Mhm.
but I can hold your hand.
I love the last. So is it hard to unlearn our desire to fix and why?
Control. And ego.
And there's compassion too. We'll start with the positive.
Right.
Compassion, because we really don't want them to be hurting. We really, really don't want that. But we think we can make it better. We want to try to make it better. Control and ego, I agree.
Men are worse at having to fix stuff, I think, than women are.
Men,
You're schooled your whole life to be a provider.
uh-huh,
You're schooled your whole life to have a job, to fix things, everything you're supposed to do is about fixing.
mhm,
And to move into a situation where, I mean, it's not automatic, it's autonomic. I mean, it's, you're wired
it's your
to try
first
to fix
reaction.
something.
It just, it's sure, yes,
And that's saying, that's not the right tack.
right. And it's hard. So maybe we have to just keep telling ourselves these messages, these Stephen Master messages of God, this is what, I think I thought I had it here somewhere, Greg Bull quote about listening is the answer, or something like that. I think it might be here somewhere else. But anyway, and then the other thing is, what does it mean to center yourself in the story of someone else's pain? What does that mean? Since we're trying to unlearn that. What happens what does that mean to center yourself in someone else's pain?
So that's what you're trying to do, or that's what
Not
you're
to,
trying
trying
to
to
not?
unlearn that. Trying to unlearn centering yourself in someone else's pain.
It's probably something that yours is more important than theirs. So you're not like you've forgotten to listen,
Mhm,
because it's about them,
right.
not about you.
It's about forgetting it's about them when you center yourself. So maybe your mind went off somewhere else. Or maybe you want to tell, oh yeah, that happened to me too. Let me tell you what happened to me. And you're trying to tell how just how they feel because I've had the same experience. Well, nobody's experiences are the same. And then,
Talk to me a little bit more about that, because I need to unlearn them, because my typical response would be trying to attempt to put yourself in somebody else's shoes so that you could be what's the word?
empathetic.
As empathetic as you can.
Mhm.
Instead of being sort of on the outside, casual. Yeah, how do you
Well,
attempt to be in a place that's similar to where they are?
Well, I think what I've read and learned, and I've got it quoted when you get to my things about what I've learned. One is that you would want to say, oh, I can only imagine how difficult it must be to be going through this, or, as opposed to, I went through that too, or something very similar, because you don't really know, and it doesn't help them to hear about your situation, but it's important that you have had those feelings and that they're in you. That's how have the compassion to be there with them and to say, I can only imagine. I mean, you want to feel it. You want to feel what they're feeling, but you don't want to tell them about your situation. Yeah, so you would say, I can only imagine how hard that must be. God. Or I say a lot, I hurt for you. That really makes me hurt for you.
One just example, we had several miscarriages between our children. And people don't know, I think people are better about talking about that now, but it was, didn't talk about it much, but people would say, oh my gosh, I had 4. And then I've had 1. And my doctor said, oh, my wife had 3. And I'm like, that doesn't help me. I've just had, so it's that kind of trumping, my story is worse, or, oh, I know what you mean, I've been through this.
I mean, what I think they're probably trying to say is, I know how you feel, but
Right.
they don't exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's not.
And it's
what I-
beside the point anyway.
Right, right.
You're not suffering right now.
They're like, oh, all I needed to do was just go on vacation.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh my
like,
God.
yes. So there was not a space of listening. It was a
Yeah.
space of, yes, sharing. I had something similar,
Yeah.
but not the continuation of that.
Yeah.
That's just a small, small.
It's not
thing.
small.
Well,
That's
at
a
the
good
time it
example.
wasn't.
Yeah, that's a
But,
good example.
But yeah, I think it's important, as you said, to feel, like to put yourself
Yeah.
there, but
Yeah.
not try to one up them on pain.
Right. Well, this has been a great discussion. I appreciate that. Let's see. Uh-oh.
Oh, did I not?
That's okay if you didn't. My list of things.
Okay.
That's okay. Is it in there? I don't know. I could have gone too fast. But anyway, what I'm gonna do is ask Gerald to send 2 things to you. Either, I guess she'll put it on the website. How are you doing on the website?
Yeah. well,
One is this continuing education class that we had last year for Stephen Ministry, and a person by the name of Matt Rhodes did it. He is the anyway, it'll say on there when you read it, but he is he trains the chaplains at Penn Medical Center, Princeton. And he's one of Anna Dixon's best friends. They went to Princeton together, and he is fabulous. Anyway, I asked Anna, she thought it would be fine for me to share this link. And he talks, it's a lot about feelings, because what student ministers do is, in listening to people talk about experiences, try to hear the feelings behind the experience. And this is like 45 minutes. And he just does a really great job of talking about feelings, how important feelings are, listening for the feelings beneath of what people are saying. So I wanted to share that with you. And then also, I'll just let her share this document that I had that lists
I'm so sorry.
all the, I call them, they're Stephen Ministry excerpts or whatever, just one-liners. Things like feelings are not something that should be judged as good or bad, because they're not something we can control. They simply are what they are. Feelings are data. They point us to places that that may need further exploration. They're a gift from God intended for a benefit. And I remember Matt said that research shows that if you help a person name their feeling, it takes away a lot of their distress. And they've actually done research to show that. But anyway, it's like probably, I don't know, 20 of Stephen Ministry teachings that I just jotted down
I'm so
here.
You're gonna send those to us?
And she can send you
I
a
will send
document.
those
It's
to you.
probably better that way. I don't need to
That's
read them
cool.
all to you. But anyway, yeah, crash course. Anyway, I thought they've been helpful to me over time. So I'll get her to send you that document and the link if you want to hear his talk. And then she has something else on the website that I thought was excellent. Brene Brown, it's only 2 minutes long, and she's talking about the difference between sympathy and empathy. And it was also very, very good. So I highly recommend.
What's the difference?
So sympathy would be like looking down in the hole and saying, I'm so sorry you're down there. What do you need? And empathy is, I'm gonna come down there with you and hear about what you need. You're with them in the empathy. Sympathy is more
Come
like,
down with a rope big enough to get us out of it.
yeah. It's being with. Empathy is being with, and sympathy is feeling sorry for. A little bit different, but she does a really good job. about it. So,
And so I put up here for those of you who don't know, we have a website where we put resources for classes. We record the class and post it there, so you can go back and watch classes from the past 2 years. But that's the website, and you would navigate to Meaning to Ask, which is for this month.
and then they have the different dates. They can go to each person's, each week. If you missed Howe, Miss Jones, you can see those, and then there's a listen, there'll be some more other links, and that'll be in there.
Yeah, and this, I will send this out to the folks on Zoom and those of us who are in here, and then I'll post it there. And I'm so sorry,
It's fine because it's
I just
long, and I was
kept
thinking it
scrolling.
should be a handout anyway, so this is great. Well, thank you all
Thank
for the
you.
discussion. Oh,
This
it's
is-
always about the discussion, so y'all had wonderful insights. I'm glad you were here. And
Thank
Nancy, you too. You got us off to a good start.
Very good. Appreciate it.
Thank you all, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.